Tonight, the U.S.-led assault against ISIL pushes on with bombings of 4 Syrian provinces. The president, he's speaking out against the military campaign to take down the extremists, while the president says the U.S. got it wrong on 2 major issues. And while Governor Cuomo speaks with counterterrorism officials in Afghanistan, his Republican challenger Rob Astorino's released a new ad, and it's an attack one. Will this help or hurt his campaign? Well, tonight, we'll be joined by Capital New York contributor Liz Benjamin. Plus, New York City public advocate Letitia James being criticized for spending too much time while doing just about anything other than going to the office. James's aides say she has lunch with family members and gets deep tissue massages, while in fact she should be hard at work. We'll get into that. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A little bit of everything over the next 60 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. And we begin tonight overseas in Afghanistan, where Governor Cuomo is wrapping up his unannounced trip to the country. The governor, he's traveling with officials from the Department of Defense and 3 other governors as well. And while in Afghanistan, Cuomo has received counterterrorism briefings and also spent time with soldiers from the New York area. Governor says progress has been made there, but ISIL is now spreading a new strain of terrorist activity. He says his goal for New York is to have the most sophisticated Homeland Security defense system created. The governor says he'll be back in New York tomorrow. Now, the latest poll numbers show that while it's not as good as it once was, he's still in a very comfortable margin over his challenger. He's got 54% of voters, according to the latest numbers, and about 29, nearly 30% are backing his challenger, Rob Astorino. While the governor has been taking a stance in the fight against terrorism, Astorino, he's been pretty busy back stateside, rolling out a new attack ad that alleges that Cuomo is under investigation for obstruction of justice, witness tampering. And the ad, I don't know how many people may remember this, but it goes back to 1964, where it mimics a famous ad from that point. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 6.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
These are the stakes. Do we re-elect a governor who may end up in jail?
Now, Astorino's top advisor has also been leaning in against his challenger. Bill O'Reilly's been getting in a few digs. O'Reilly blasting Dean Skelos, the GOP leader, here saying that Skelos has been following Governor Cuomo around like a puppy dog. Also tweeted, battered leader syndrome, speaking of Skelos, or as Cuomo sold out the Dems and the Working Families Party again. Earlier today, I spoke with Capital New York contributor Liz Benjamin about not just her recent piece about Astorino's anti-strategy, but also the seemingly whiff of desperation surrounding it. Here's her take on Astorino's new attack ad that you just saw. If they intended to get your attention, they succeeded, but I don't know how many people are going to be able to make the connection to, LBJ and Goldwater here. It just, I don't know, scared a whole bunch of folks with the nuke going off as a girl's picking daisies. I don't know about you, but to me it came off as a little bit on the desperate side.
Yeah, I think a number of people have made that characterization. I'm not sure that I know that that strategy is going to be the most effective one either. It's a little bit too cute by half, I think. Certainly you need to be an informed student of politics to remember that or have lived through that era. People who are perhaps really engaged in the process know, but he needs to appeal to people beyond those already engaged individuals in order to make any sort of a stab at winning or even putting up a decent showing on Election Day.
To your piece that you wrote, I did some media, in fact, for people who were asking about Rob Astorino, and I said he's consistently underestimated for those folks who know him from the Westchester market. Registration definitely skews Democrat here. He had to beat an incumbent in Andy Spano and then had another tough challenge this past fall. All that said, he's not showing up great here on the big stage with all those disadvantages, money, name recognition, state registration withstanding. I guess he's throwing everything against the wall, but in the process, he's turning off, as you say in your piece, a lot of the state power brokers, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And, his campaign says that's by design, actually. Now, you can question the efficacy of that strategy, but his main consultant, and I know you're familiar with him, Bill O'Reilly, who has actually been the architect and at some points implementing some of this bomb throwing to the would-be allies, and most notably the Senate Republicans, and he's picked a lot of fights with them on Twitter. He told me, and it's reflected in the piece, that Rob Astorino made this decision that he was going to go all in and he was going to call out the status quo, and he didn't care if that was going to impact his fundraising or impact the possibility of people supporting him, because he thinks that that message is going to resonate with the voters. Now, the governor is making every attempt to co-opt or neutralize any of the would-be allies that Rob Astorino would have. And since the likelihood is that he'll be reelected, he's very powerful and capable in that manner. People don't really want to cross him.
I get where Bill and Rob are going with this, but what I don't understand is you're making this easy for Republicans to stay out of it when you call Dean Skelos your prison punk. As it relates to his relationship with the governor. You could have at least made it difficult for them, with Moreland and everything else going around, to stay out of the fight here. He's kind of, giving them a pass, whether he means to or not.
Well, that incident actually happened over the summer. The person who was, again, who used prison punk as a hashtag on Twitter was Bill O'Reilly. And it was following, Rob Astorino put forth a pretty aggressive ethics package that really called out the state legislature. And I don't think that the legislature liked it one bit. And Dean Skelos certainly is trying. He recognizes that this is a Democrat-dominated state. He really wants to hold or retake the majority in the Senate. And to do so, he has to appeal to independents and conservative Democrats and demonstrate that, in fact, he works in a bipartisan fashion with the governor. Now, the governor has said he's in favor of a full Democratic takeover of the Senate, but so far he's not publicly doing all that much toward that goal. And he's doing things that actually would benefit the Senate Republicans, appearing with them in public, for example. So the Republicans are really beholden to him in many ways. But Rob Astorino, certainly his campaign, we should say, not just the candidate, has made things difficult for them. Some individuals would have assisted him and are now sitting on their hands.
Liz, I really appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, we're going to bring our panel here tonight. Jeanne Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and a professor of campaign management at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent, and more. But Jeanne, what do you think about that ad, honestly? Because, I guess he's got to make news. When you're trailing, you throw Hail Marys and stuff, but really? You're throwing a nuclear bomb reference in the middle of a governor's race?
Yeah, I mean, as a political scientist, I'm all for looking back at the iconic ads of 50 years ago, so I heralded it for that.
But you, me, and maybe 50 people made the connection, right?
And I don't remember it personally, but I've studied it. But, my question was exactly what you just said. I was unclear what the message was. Are they really equating the war against communism with, the Moreland Commission issue? What was the point of the ad?
Well,
I couldn't quite...
They're saying that his corruption issues might blow up on him and blow up on the state.
That's a stretch.
It's a stretch, but let me help out for the purpose of.
And I agree, it gets free media coverage. That's important. It's a one-day ad only, and they don't have the money to run more, so it works to that extent. But I'm not so sure. I asked a few people today, and it was like I was asking about something, so far back. They had none of my students even know Reagan, let alone Johnson.
Okay, stop scaring me. So Dom, you always say, and I think you're right, even though I think you're being a little generous, that he's not going to be governor this time, but he'll be governor the other.
He definitely is not going to be governor.
But my point is something different. We've seen this before, where somebody knows, hey, I'm gonna eat it on this one, but I'm gonna get name recognition statewide. I'm gonna go to every county here. I have this excuse for me to campaign statewide and all this. So when my next run comes, I'm better positioned. You can argue Astorino did it himself the first time he ran for county executive, so he was better positioned the second time when he did win. But he's blowing up bridges wherever he's going. And it's not just with Dean Skelos, right, who's arguably one of not the most powerful Republicans in Albany. The Utica County exec here is a Republican. He dumped all over his county's revival. He's basically told the business council here that, if you're not going to attack Cuomo, I don't even want your nomination. If he plans, and I assume he does, to run again for this or some other statewide office, I don't get the strategy of the crash and burn this time around. It doesn't make sense. He's picking fights that there's no point to pick.
It does not make sense. Mr. Astorino right now will not be governor. I will say what the professor did not say. That ad is horrible, and whoever made that ad, I don't know.
We know who made that ad.
Okay, he's a friend of ours, and we really like him. But what were they smoking? That's an ad that made history 50 years ago.
And what was the point?
It's a different time. And what
by the way,
Mr.
back then they ran it for
Astorino,
one day,
right?
and they
So
didn't
in
want
other
to
words,
keep running it. They back then it was crazy.
It's an ad that's generally made just to get media attention because you don't have money to make a real buy. But what Mr. Astorino was finding out the hard way, did he think this was going to be a walk in the park? This is called the power of incumbency. That's why it's so hard to beat an incumbent, because an incumbent can line up party allies as well as allies from the opposite party, people that have got to do business with that individual, and that's what you're seeing with Dean Skelos and others. They're not going to blow up their relationship for Cuomo for a guy that's 25 points down, only a month from the election, basically, and has no chance of winning.
You could argue, Andrew, not that he can win or could win, but there's some chinks in the armor for Governor Cuomo, and the polls reflect it. He could have made it hard on Republicans to sit this one out and not endorse him. He's making it easy for guys to say, I'm going to take a pass here, because he's attacking them. So why should they go, take the awkward thing of going against the governor and going for them? He has other things. He could be talking about debates that the governor won't sit and do a televised with him. He could bang on the Moreland Commission in a way that will be taken more seriously. There doesn't seem to be any sense going where he's going here.
First of all, I think he's got the sense, Astorino does, that the Republican power structure that he would be able to court, or that you think maybe he should be able to court, isn't budging no matter what he does. They kind of have to deal with Andrew Cuomo because he's likely to be the governor again.
You do agree, though, he's got to
election.
think long-term, not just November, right?
I actually think he's trying to win this go-round. I don't think he's running a 2018 gubernatorial campaign. I think he's trying to close the gap as best he can this go-round in the hopes that, when all is said and done, his loss or the margin is smaller than everybody thinks it's going to be. So he then becomes the presumptive nominee for his party again in 4 years down the road. He's trying to use his performance this time to advance his campaign for next time, if he's running again next time, which I suspect he probably is. But I don't think he's thinking long term.
Do you like that ad?
No, I think it's terrible.
Okay,
I think it's terrible. I don't think it's gubernatorial in the least, and I think that's been one of the problems with the Astorino campaign so far.
Yeah.
He's not projecting as a governor.
I think we agree on that one. Now, when we come back here, we mentioned the governor was overseas, but the whole issue of terror threats, both here and internationally, is where we'll focus next as we go to Syria, where the U.S. and allied forces continue their air assaults against ISIL. The president had something really interesting to say last night, and also Speaker Boehner said some things as well on Sunday. We'll tell you what they have to say and where this fight goes next. Stay with us.